Hello, Amy Chase King. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hi.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
You've been so active for more than 15 years now to bring up the awareness about the cannabis plant. What could you say about your work?
We've come a long way. We're at a historic place right now. I got into the space because my uncle was a Vietnam veteran who suffered with post-traumatic stress. He used alcohol, which was a legal substance, to deal with the pain and anxiety that he experienced from war. During those periods where he was very intoxicated and refused to sleep, I found that if I blew smoke in his face, he would actually relax enough to sleep and at least get a few hours of rest. And it was then that I discovered or began to explore the therapeutic properties of cannabis, and propelled me into the place where I am now, working at the international level.
But you're also a cannabis user, so what the plant means to you?
It means personal freedom to me. The freedom to choose a quality of life that is satisfying and fulfilling to the person who chooses to experience it.
You've been also active politically, so what do you think were the most important achievements?
Well, I mean, significantly, if you look at the United States model, you see that more than 2/3 of the United States offers medical access of some form. Veterans can speak to their federal agent doctor about cannabis in states where medical access is legal. We're still illegal at a federal stage, but the conversation is going really strong at the federal level towards acknowledging medical.
Can you tell me a little bit about the work that you do for the FAT? Did I pronounce it well?
Yes, it's FAT.
FAT.
FAAAT.net. So FAT, FAAT. FAT is an international think and do tank that looks at alternative actions for addiction policies. We are in the business of harm reduction, sensible policies, in evidence-based science policies where drug use is concerned. Most specifically, we work at the United Nations level on looking and following the processes of the World Health Organization, United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, International Narcotics Control Board. So really high level Commission of Narcotics Drugs. So what we did was we developed a report called Cannabis and Sustainable Development under the United Nations umbrella of agencies. They have established the Sustainable Development Goals to make a better, fairer, more equal world. And those 17 goals encompass everything from eliminating poverty to sound air and water policies. And so what we did was we created a report that showed how cannabis can contribute positively to the communities in reaching these goals, and inside of each of these goals are targets. And so this is a living document. The Sustainable Development Goals are a long-term set of ambitions, 2030 in this case. So we have 10 years of which communities can take this guide and they can develop it inside of their own nations to improve or to show how cannabis can contribute to meeting these goals. So if you go to FAAAT.net, you can actually download this book for free, and as well as our other publications which cover our work and our investigations of the drug treaty system and the World Health Organization review of cannabis. So you can find all of our works there.
Fact Organization also made an investigation about war on drugs and prohibition of cannabis. Could you point out those most important facts about the cannabis prohibition?
Okay, so the most important things to know about prohibition is that it has been forced upon us without legal basis. In the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, of which cannabis was lumped, without any scientific evidence to prove its scheduling. In other words, they said that cannabis was a harmful substance and that it had no therapeutic modality, all without scientific evidence. Under the 1961 Convention, Article 28, there are basically 3 sentences. The second of those 3 sentences literally excludes the cultivation of cannabis plant for industrial purposes, there at that time defined as fiber and seed, or horticultural purposes. The intent of the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs is to control substances that would be used as pharmaceutical medicinal drugs. With that in mind, industrial applications have always been exempted and thereby should have never been forcefully controlled by our governments. Secondarily, another document in 2009, a guidance document called the Cannabis Identification and Analysis, developed for law enforcement, clearly defined industrial versus drug type cannabis as a formula, not a percentage, but a ratio actually. Whereas if the ratio of THC was greater than 1 to CBD, this was a drug type cannabis. If the ratio of THC to CBD was less than 1, this was an industrial type cannabis. So our agencies, our highest authoritative guidance agencies, determined that industrial cannabis was a high cannabidiol plant and that it was not a drug type. So we need to assert our legal rights under these not only convention exemptions, but the guidance that drives these conventions.
So, to cultivate cannabis plant at home in your garden, which is horticultural purposes, should not be a part of regulations.
Right. It shouldn't. It's not a concern for drug policy where the 1961 Convention is concerned, because we're not growing in our gardens for pharmaceutical development or use of medicinal application for the mass populace. And it's important to note that the drug treaty does not supersede. In other words, it does not take precedence over other treaties. And specifically, it does not supersede human rights treaties, a number of treaties that our countries have obliged themselves to. We need to nationally and then cumulatively, internationally, assert our rights to not have our human rights violated simply in the name of another convention.